Sean from Shield Wall Gaming here, and sorry if the quality of this video isn't as good as some of the other ones, having a few computer issues, but doing a workaround. So DMArmada did a really good video the other day. Several of us have been playing on Untapped, which is a website you can play Flesh and Blood on. But Tabletop Simulator has had a few little mods come out with some starter decks and things like that. Finally, Legend Story Studios and a user named KP have done a great job of kind of putting together this option for us, which is a mod on Tabletop Simulator. Now, I'm going to link to DMArmada's video when he talks about how you can play Flesh and Blood with other software. He talks about Tabletop Simulator. He talks about how to get it and how to load it. So I'm going to let him handle that. And thanks to KP for doing this mod, because it's been great. Shield Wall, a lot of us have been playing Flesh and Blood this way. I'm going to go over just a couple of basics with this. And again, DMArmada does a good job of covering a few of the basics. But then I'm going to actually walk through a little bit of a game to show you some of the other shortcuts that we've been using, that we've discovered as we've been playing, and some of the other people on Discord have been discovering as we've been playing and as you learn the game. So Tabletop Simulator, if you're not familiar with it, is a physics engine that basically allows you to play board games, just like you would if we were sitting across from each other. And this mod is no exception, as it really just has stacks of cards that you're going to formulate your decks with. And so to start off, we'll look at if you want to create a deck, and let's say I'm building my ninja deck. I could look for the stack of ninja cards here, and there's several ways you can do this. Like I said, you could just dig through until you find the cards. The easiest way is to right-click and say search, and then look for the cards you want. It shows everything in singleton, and I'm going to take my red blackout kicks here. And then you can right-click and copy these, or you can, of course, Control-C, Control-V, just like you normally would when you're playing the game. And what's nice is, and of course, the scrolling and everything is wheel mouse. Click on the wheel mouse, you move everything around, and then you can rotate by clicking the right mouse button. And then, of course, the left mouse button does all the selecting and everything. What's nice about this is when they get over top of each other, they will form stacks together. And so this is how you can start building your deck. If you do have a bunch of cards all over the place, and I wanted to put all of these together, this is totally illegal, but put all of these together, I could do this and hit G, and it'll group them all together. And then the best way to save your deck is to then right-click on this and then go down to Save Object, and you can save in folders and everything else. When you go to your objects, you can go to saved objects and it'll show it here. Of course, you can make other folders, all kinds of stuff here. This is my Flesh and Blood folder for a couple of decks I have. So Armada kind of covered a lot of that stuff, so I wasn't going to go through too much of that. But there's some things that we got into when we were trying to figure it out. We were starting to learn that I think I wanted to go over. So the first thing is, when you build your deck, build it just like I did. Pull out the cards you need, make copies, put them in a stack, take the hero tokens. Don't forget to do that you need. There's a stack for that's there. And then build your sideboard separately. So two things here. When I open up an object and I come into here, and let's say this is my main deck. This is some upgrades I made. This was my main before my upgrades with some Arcane Rising stuff. And then this is my sideboard. So it's just called, this is Bravo Bash, I understand. But this is Bravo Crush, let's say. This is Bravo Crush main. This is Bravo Crush sideboard. So if I just clicked on this, it's going to load it into the space that everything loads on when you do that, which is fine. But if I loaded both of these at the same time, now my sideboard just gets added right on top of that. Now I've got 82 cards. I've got, actually, I have 2 tokens in here as well. I have 2 seismic tokens. Actually, I just shuffled by mistake, and you can see that. So we're going to talk about the mechanics of all. So what I do instead is whenever you save your deck, just save them somewhere on the table. It's not likely that you'll ever save them in the exact same spot. And then go into them and click on this top part and click Spawn. and it'll spawn them where you save them, and it's not very likely that you save them in the exact same spaces. So here's my sideboard, and then there's my main deck. So makes sense so far. Well, I'm going to delete my sideboard here, and you can just hover over it and hit these buttons. Now, the nice thing is, at any point, if you are wondering on some of these shortcuts what to do, if you go to the main menu and then hit main menu, here's your cheat sheet for all of these things I'm about to show you. And a couple of them work pretty well. Some of these don't quite always pertain to the game, but they work fine. So first thing you're going to notice is you're going to go and try to pick up this deck. And when you try to pick it up, you're going to pull the top card off the top, and you're going to go, oh, crap. And then you're going to do it again, and you're going to be like, oh, crap, I just want to move the deck. So real simple thing, and the reason this is funny is it took me about 20 minutes to recognize. Now 20 minutes is an exaggeration, but it took me a little while to recognize that to move the deck, you're going to click and hold, and now I can move the deck anywhere I want. So I can move my deck wherever I need it. So in fact, yeah, I could probably get rid of those zones, but I'm not going to do that now. So here is your main deck. And how I did is I have Bravo here. I have my token here, my weapon, and then my equipment that I'm going to put into its place. So let's go ahead and try to just start playing a game with myself here, and in that it'll show you how this kind of works. So I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to put my hero here, put this here. I'll show you what these boxes were put in here for. I'm not a huge fan of them because there's a quicker way to kind of peek at things, but this is designed so you could pick a card off and kind of peek at it. We can pull cards off, have it face down and peek at it, and I'll show you that in a second. So first things first, I have my whole deck here, and I want to flip it over. So I just hit the F button, or I can right click and I can hit flip as well. Flip is right down here. But I just did that. Now I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to shake it, and that'll shuffle it. Also, hovering over it and hitting the R button will shuffle it. And you can actually shuffle by right clicking as well, and it'll tell you that R is the way to do that. So once our deck is shuffled, we're going to put it over here. And then it's time to draw, right? So I'm going to put my token over here, and it's time to draw. So I'm going to right click, and you could hit draw, and I could hit draw 4 times if I want to. I can also pick which color player I want it to draw to. Now in this game, you're not going to worry about that. But in other games, I mean, Tabletop Simulator has a lot of games that you can play. I purchased there's about 41 games that you can purchase that are very finely produced. One of them was Blood Rage, which is one of my favorite board games of all time. And then there's about 1,500 mod full board games that are free under the workshops. Again, DMArmada shows you how to get into the workshops with this video. I'll link to that in my video. And then there's about 14,000 mods altogether. Yeah, and let me show you that real quick before we start. Before I get started, you have your counter here, your life counters. You have some dice here to start, and if you highlight, let's say you highlight these dice, you could right-click and hit roll. And then you can also, of course, R means randomize, which is kind of nice in the game. So whether I'm rolling or randomizing, I could hit R and randomize them. I randomize that token there. The other thing I do, especially if I'm playing the Mechanist, is I'll go to Objects and Components, and then I'll go to Go, and then I'll click a bowl of these tokens here. You don't really need to do that. I just kind of like the look of it. The reason you don't need to do that is if I delete this here, they provide 1 token for you so that you can, remember, you can copy and you can just paste as many tokens as you feel you need. So you don't need the bowl, but I just kind of like the look of it. It is what it is. However you want to do it is fine. Totally up to you. And then, of course, these are good for, putting tokens on your cards and things like that you need to do. So first thing is draw. I can right click and I can hit deal, or I can hit draw. Yeah, I guess I said draw and I meant deal, but draw, I can click on this 4 times. The easier way to do it is just hover over it and hit the number on the number pad that you want to draw up. So if I hit 4, it draws 4 cards for me. And notice it puts them over here so that there's a place for players to have their cards so that I can see how many cards that somebody has all the time. So right now, these are not viewable to another player in the game. Also, someone else can point to and flip my cards. So in the example of Intimidate, you can do that to a random card, let's say. So if we were to play a game, there's a couple things first that we need to look or understand. And first is like, I can't really see the cards, right? So I'm going to zoom in and look at the cards. That's kind of a pain. There's a very quick way to get around that is any object that's movable that you roll over, and that goes for even dice and things like that. You roll over it. If you hit the Alt key and hold it, it gives you a zoomed up version of the card. And so that goes for the cards in your hand as well. I can even hold the Alt key and just scroll these, which is kind of nice. I can hold the Alt key here and it's going to track where my mouse is, and I can see all of these different things there. And of course, you can do that with dice and tokens and anything that's movable basically in the game. And your score, your life, in case you can't see that. That's pretty crazy. Okay. So once I've drawn my cards, now let's say I'm going to play my cards. And so let's say on my first turn, I'd love to play this, but I'd also really love to play this. Gosh, this is an interesting hand to draw. But I'm not really quite ready for that. So let's just do this. We can go back and get that. Let's just say I'm going to play it this way. I will pitch a card. I'm going to pitch Spinal Crush because I'm going to get that back at some point. And I'm going to, so I have one floating resource, and then I'm going to pitch Crush Confidence. So I now have 2 cards in my pitch zone that are 3+, and so I'm attacking with Anothos for 6, and then we'll let the opponent do what they're going to do, and they may take damage or they don't take damage, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to pull these back, and I'm going to put a card in my arsenal. So before I put a card in my arsenal, I am going to flip that card, and I'm going to play it down right here. Now, what this zone is for, this is a hidden zone, and what it's designed for is I can pull a card. Oops, see, I already did the, actually, I can pull a card off the top. Once this is highlighted gray like that, as soon as it's highlighted gray, my opponent can't see it. So if I flip this over, I can put it here in this zone, and then I can look at it, and then I can pick it up and flip it over and put it back. Now, the other way to do it is just draw this into your hand and look at it. Now, from a competitive standpoint, that's not the best way to go. You shouldn't put it in your hand and put it down because it's hard to track what's happening. What really should happen is that you should draw this off, pull it into the zone. Now your opponent knows that you're looking at a card in this zone, and then put this back on top of the deck, and they can easily see that. If I drew this and put it in my hand, they might be able to see and track what it is, but I could, oops, let me do that. I'm going to put that on top. Oops, I'm not doing that. I'm going to switch and put this on top of my deck. Now, I'm hoping that none of us in the flesh and blood world would do this, but there are people that, have their own problems in life and might try to cheat and play games and, whatever. So that's what's nice about this zone. I am actually a fan, and so if you go into this zone section, and you go into, you can create your own hidden zones and randomized zones and all that. If you click on this, it'll actually delete them. And so that's generally what we do when we play. I'll go back to grab. And then what I do, and so this is the important kind of tip of the day that took us a good while to figure out, and actually people on Discord just started getting it, is if you go into your help menu and you look at your modifiers and things you can do, you can peek at cards. And so that was really cool, and it'll actually show the opponent that you can peek at a card. So as an example, now what I can do is oops, gosh darn it. See, I always do that. So you gotta be quick with it. So I'm gonna pull a card off. So now my opponent can see the card that I've pulled off. Let's say if I'm opting 1 or whatever the case may be, and we'll show you how you put cards in the bottom of the deck and all that. Now my opponent can see that card, and now I can peek at the card. So all you gotta do is hit Alt, right? Well, Alt will show you the back of the card, and then if I tap Shift, now I've looked at the card on the other side, and watch when I release everything. Now a little eye floats that lets my opponent know I looked at that card. Now that's important because if he has a card over here that's face down, I don't necessarily think in Flesh and Blood, at least at this point, it's an issue, but it could be one later on in the future for other cards. But other games it certainly is. If I could I could look at that card too, and now my opponent sees, wait a minute, you just looked at my card, so I'm not sure why you did that. All right, cool. So same thing with your arsenal, and that's what's powerful about the arsenal. That's a good place for the arsenal. If you forget what you put here, or you know what, I can't. Gosh, does this have a cost on it? I can't remember. I can just peek at it. Oh yeah, I got Sink Below in there. That works out good. So then that would be the end of my turn. Now at the end of my turn, all I'm going to do is highlight these. This is the easiest way to do it. There are other ways that there's an under key. You can use the U. That's really more designed for if I lay a card down like this and I want to put that under the other one, I can do that like I just did. Um, and you can actually utilize that to put things at the bottom of the deck, but it's a little clunky. I think I did it one time and I'm like, I'm never doing that again. So you come here, hit the F key, flip this, pick up your entire deck, and then just put it on top. And there you go. Now you've chosen the order you want your cards to go underneath, and then you put the cards on the bottom of the deck. And now I have this, and now I'm going to draw up 3. All I'm going to do is hover over and hit the 3 button, and now I've got my cards, and I'm waiting for my opponent's turn. So that's kind of the gist of most of the commands that you're kind of going to want to use. The zone is a nice zone. We actually play with it for a little bit, and we added our own and all these different things. I think it's so again, if I'm opting 1, I think it's much better for my opponent to see the card the whole time, and then let me look at the card. Okay, I've looked at this. You know what? I'm going to put this on the bottom of my deck. I don't want that card to come up. This obviously with the mechanologist and the other anything that's using opt, that's a pretty big thing. You're doing it a lot, so I kind of like that better. But I will say that a lot of people didn't know about this peak ability until just a couple of days ago. So some pretty cool things. You can choose like sometimes I'll use when I activate Bravo's ability, I'll tap him. I'll use the Q or the E button, and I'll tap him 90 degrees. I can change up here how much of a degree I change on my tap. So I might do 45 degrees, and I might rotate him and say, okay, I'm going to activate Bravo's ability, and then when my turn's over, I'll kind of do that just as a reminder. There are ways you can, if you hit F4, I can point to a card and then just kind of go off. F4 takes you into this line because what F4 does is it puts you into this, and you can draw things. This is if I was doing that and this, and then I wanted to attack something. But there's something I've done that just every once in a while I've done that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to activate his ability, and now my opponent just knows, okay, I'm doing something to that card. So there's some cool things in here that you can play around, but I think those are all pretty much the controls that you would need. I can't think of any other controls off the top of my head that would be necessary. Like I said, you can't really see it here, but if I were to go, just like I can point to a card here and flip it, I can do the same thing to my opponent. So why that's important is Intimidate's a great example. Or anytime, hey, discard a random card, right? So there's random card disruption or discarding. Certainly with Bravo, I can point to a card and go, that one, which is pretty much what people do now when in live play. So Tabletop Simulator is really cool. It's got some cool functionality. It's definitely worth it to get in here. When you're building a deck, you'll learn kind of the fundamentals of dragging cards and playing cards. Everything runs really smooth. The problem with Untap is it's newer. I think it's hosted by I'm not sure. I don't know if it's in the U.S., which is fine, but I think that what I mean by that is there might be some delay in servers and our access to it, and so the servers aren't always reliable. I was playing with a Shield Wall member a few days ago on Untap, and we crashed out of like 3 games in a row. And again, they're working on it. Everybody right now. I mean, I'm surprised that our networks and our infrastructure is holding up because everybody's working from home. Everybody's straining these things, these resources, these networks. Tabletop Simulator has been around for a while, so they know what they're doing as far as servers and everything. They might continue to get strained, but they're also making some good money right now, I think, off of this game too. So hopefully they'll put that into good use and be able to run these servers. We haven't had any issues with games as of right now. And again, it's not running anything. It's not running algorithms or scripts. It's just, I mean, it is, but it's doing it in a standard way. It's not like deciding, okay, so I attack with an Othos and this person is trying to block or this person is trying to defend with a defense reaction card. You can't do that. No, this is live play. Like I've got to catch that just like you normally would. Everything you can do to your cards, you can do to your opponent's cards. One last thing that is important is when you invite someone into the game, there's going to be a little plus here for friends, or when you start a game, you can start a game by clicking on multiplayer. I'll show you that just real quick. Well, before I do that, when you click on the person's name, there'll be an option here to give them permissions. That's important because they won't be able to load their decks in. They won't be able to do all these things. DMArmada talks about flipping the table when you got angry. I did that to somebody the other day. I didn't really get angry. But Control Z will always take you back to the board state you were in. If I move things around, Control Z takes you back to that last state. If someone starts messing with stuff, somebody gets mad, you can always kind of reset that last kind of state that you were in, that resting state, which is pretty cool. So if I wanted to start a game real quick, and we're getting to 20 minutes in this video, so it's a little long. I apologize for that. But if I wanted to create a multiplayer game, I could do that. You create kind of your own server, your password here, how many players you want. I usually do 3 so that people can pop in as spectators, because sometimes we have that. And then from there, once I create the server, I didn't want to do that because it created it. I didn't load what I wanted. I'm sorry. Once you create a server, I should say, what you're going to be looking for is if someone wants to join, FAB is a good kind of code word for this because it's quick and easy, and it doesn't look like there's many games. The games are always live running, so it's a little funky. If we had a game, so like right here, there's a game here. I could click on this and try to get into it, and if I tried to get into it, it might ask me for a password or something like that. You can search friends only games. That makes it easy to be able to quickly see what games are out there. So some of this is a little clunky getting into this. You can see this is a private game. They don't want someone just bouncing in. They're waiting for somebody, but it's pretty cool. And you can see there's a U.S. game and a New Zealand game right now. So there's people from all over that are utilizing this. Pretty cool. So thanks for giving Shield Wall a chance. Appreciate it. Just wanted to bring you this video. Hopefully it helps you out a little bit and helps you play this game digitally. Tabletop Simulator is $20. You can get it on sale sometimes. Thanks for watching.